Hello there, 40k fans. FloridaMan40k. My name is Jimmy Prescott. Here with me I have Dan, man with the iron hands, Smith.
What's going on, my bros? How's it going?
And John, white scars hitting hard, Lennon.
I feel like I have also iron hands, but Daniel is more iron hands. He's kind of Danis the Menace.
Yeah, but Dan has iron hands, and then you have been using white scars, right?
That's true. I have some iron hands. I just don't lose my head as often as he does.
Yeah, well, so anybody who's listened to these other podcast episodes, you may know myself, Dan Smith, and John Lennon, but you may not know our special guest, a very beautiful man, Dan, wishing Eldar were still on top, Monsalve.
What's going on, guys? Glad to be here.
That was kind of brutal.
Yep.
I know, dude. So brutal, man. So brutal.
They're pretty close.
I gotta say, that was pretty cool. But I gotta say, I think Eldar are still very, very good. And Dan Monsalve, because this is going to get crazy real quick with two Dans. So I'll be Smith for the episode. Dan managed to take out not one, not two, but three different Marine players on his way to top table. So let's just dive right in. You want to tell us more about that, Dan?
Wait, top table of what, Dan? Some people may not know.
True.
It's Coastal Assault.
We were at, yeah, Coastal Assault. It was Coastal Assault over in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. It was put on by, if I'm not mistaken, the Wrong Way, some of the Wrong Way kids guys, Carter and those guys. But it was a really good event. I had a great time. I thought the venue was awesome and everything. So I'm sure you guys, probably feel the same way.
Dude, I loved the event. Especially they brought food in. Like the ticket was $95, which at first you're like, that's kind of a little bit, but it was a great venue. It was cool. I didn't have any nerd sweat. I had lunch delivered to me both days. Like, honestly, it was totally worth it. I'm definitely going to be going back next year if he hosts it.
Yeah, same here. But yeah, getting into the event. Like you guys said, I had to go through a bunch of Space Marines to make it to that top table with Dan. It's the given. I feel like we all expect that right now. Space Marines are strong. They're in a really, really, really good place. So, it is as expected. But I guess to kind of get into a little bit what I went through, my round one, my opponent.
What were you playing? What were you playing, Monsalve?
Oh, what was I playing? Yeah, of course. So I was playing Aldari, I guess you could say. It was an air wing, a Craft World air wing with your, 3 Crimson Hunters and a Hemlock, a Dark Eldar air wing with 3 Razor Wing jet fighters, and access to Vec mostly. And then I had an Alteoc battalion, had your Farseer jet bike, Autarch on jet bike with the Lance and fusion gun. Who, by the way, in my opinion, does a lot of work for me. The more I've played him, the more I've learned how to play that Autarch, the more he does for me. 3 Ranger squads, and then 3 Fire Prisms, which, again, also do a whole bunch of work for me. So I'm really happy with the list. I took that list to Crucible also. So I've gotten a good amount of practice with it. The last couple of months, every practice game I've played has been against Space Marines of one form or another. Because I just figure if you're going to be running into them at a tournament, you're trying to do good, might as well get as many games as you can against them, even if you're just getting your ass beat the whole time. Whatever you're learning out of every ass beating, I guess you could say. So round one, I played a guy, his name was Nick, great opponent. Nick, he was running, Imperial Fist. It was, usual. It was a bunch of intercessors with Stalker Bolt rifles that we all know are crazy good, in Imperial Fist specifically. Damage 3 against vehicles, a list like mine that's so vehicle heavy. It's really good against it. He had a Leviathan in there. He had your Chaplain Dreadnought. Again, another thing that's really good, and it's really a pain for me. I just kind of had to take those shots pretty much all game. I think that's one of the only things I didn't get by the end of the game was that Dreadnought. It was just hard to get to. But anyway, then that game ended up going my way. I was able to win that one 33-17. So that was a pretty solid win. Round two, I played against a guy named Michael Nick. He was playing Ultramarines. Again, a lot of intercessors. I think it was like 30 intercessors, a Leviathan. You have Gollum, a Chaplain, or Cassius specifically. You had Tiggy Smalls in there, Tigerius, and a bunch of intercessors in a Leviathan. Again, same thing. I was able to use my movement, the speed, the constant damage output from the prisms, and I was able to win that one pretty well. That ended up being a 33-20. I'm sorry. My opponent wasn't Michael Nick. My opponent was Nick Carpenter in that second game with the Ultramarines. So that was my bad. I'm looking at this wrong here.
No, you're good. There were a couple Michaels, a couple Nicks, so it makes sense.
Yeah. So my bad on that. Sorry for getting that name wrong. Round 3, I played against Rob Harp, another one of the Brohammer guys. He was playing Iron Hands. That, by the way, was the only game of the weekend that I got to go first. I went second in every game. And the only reason I went first in this game is because Rob gave me first turn. I think we talked about it afterwards. It probably wasn't the best idea. He was playing your Iron Hands with the 3 interceptors, the flyers. He was running a Dorado, which I thought was a nice addition to the list. It gave him that 5-up invul, for his Executioner and his Redemptor Dreadnought. And some of his, just whatever was around that Dorado was getting that 5-up invul. So I thought that was pretty cool. Again, he gave me first turn. I was able to do a good amount of damage in that initial turn. And I think in that matchup, as we'll probably talk about later, that I'm able to put out a lot of firepower. And so is that, so are, any Iron Hand lists. But in that specific matchup, I think whoever goes first just obviously gets the upper hand. So again, he gave me first turn. I was able to win that one. So that was my day 1. I went 3-0 day 1. Round 4, I played against another one of our teammates, Mark Perry. Great player, plays Chaos. And he was playing a very different Chaos list than you're seeing right now. He was playing, it was a Bloodthirster. You guys correct me if I'm wrong. I'll make sure I remember the names of all this stuff correctly. It was a Bloodthirster Incessant Rage, I think he was called.
That's probably it. Just go with Bloodthirster and let it. Just let it roll.
Yeah.
Because I never remember either. Big Bloodthirster probably had a big axe.
Bloodthirster of Incestual Rage?
Yes, that's exactly it.
Something you got to keep in mind, I don't remember what kind of Bloodthirster it was, but with Perry, he sometimes takes a bunch of off-the-wall, kind of janky choices, like a Warlord Bloodthirster. But Perry stopped winning the ITC. He's won a couple majors this year, a couple more GTs. He was on my ATC team, so even if something maybe sounds a little weird, trust me, this guy's got a plan for it. He's definitely one of the best players of that event.
Oh yeah, and he knows what he's doing. If he has something in that list, like you were saying, even though it might seem different, he's got it in there for a reason, and you need to be careful because he knows what he's doing with whatever piece that is.
Yeah, exactly. What I've found is he's got 2,000 points, and he has a job assigned to every single point of that list, whether or not it makes sense to you. He has one.
Yep, no, definitely, and. I guess we can get into that game a little bit more because to me, that was a really interesting game. So I came up to the table. I saw a Bloodthirster. I saw a Morty. I saw Karn the Betrayer. I saw Armin. I saw a Chaos Lord with a jump pack. I think it was a Sorcerer with Terminator armor, I think. Bunch of Nurglings and 3 Disco Lords. So I'm like, okay. Well, I should be able to take this, but also knowing it's Perry sitting behind that list. So something's going on. He knows what he's doing. So, we started out the game. I took Kingslayer. I made sure to get that Bloodthirster early. Like John mentioned earlier, that Bloodthirster was his Warlord. So I was able to take that out, early in the game. But I guess the main thing I want to get at is I was able to do a lot of damage throughout that game. I was able to take out the Disco Lords before they did a whole lot. I was able to kill that Bloodthirster early. I was able to do a lot of consistent damage every turn. I was just taking out key pieces. But that and all, that game still ended up being a 26-25. I won by 1 point. Again, those Nurglings, I didn't hold an objective for like 3 turns in that game. The fact that I even won that game was, without the 3 turns not holding any objectives, that makes you sweat, man. If you're not, usually that hold one should be a point that you're kind of counting on every turn in the majority of matchups, but I couldn't even count on that. Those Nurglings were just, I had to use my firepower to kill other things. So again, that ended up being an awesome game. And I was able to take that one. And then going into round 5, top table, I had to go up against my buddy here, Dan Smith. But I guess we'll get into that a little later.
Yeah, so that's actually something I wanted to follow up with you on, was the game with Perry. I love his list design here, because what he did is he built a threat saturation list and then took one of the best OBSEC units in the game in Nurglings and just kind of snuck them onto objectives. And they don't die quickly, so you're either taking out threats that are going to crush you, or you're taking out the troops that are holding all the objectives. Like that. And it doesn't look like that on paper. You're just thinking, oh, he's just throwing these models on the table. But that's actually like a really good strategy that if you don't catch on to it, it's just going to beat you.
It was fantastic. He got bonus for I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was the first 3 turns. He got bonus. Again, I didn't hold an objective, and this is just strictly off the strength of those Nurglings. Those Nurglings were just, they were getting him a ton of points, and there was really not a whole lot I could do. I couldn't throw my Rangers at him because, from experience, Nurglings versus Rangers, Nurglings come out on top every time. I don't want to assault any Nurglings with my Rangers, or they'll just sit there in combat for turn after turn after turn, and usually there's more Nurglings than Rangers. So it just, like you said, he had a reason to have those Nurglings in there. They did a whole lot of work for him.
I had a game against Nurglings as well in my very last game, and I felt the same way. That disgustingly resilient, it's exactly the right wording for that power. Because that, for some reason, Nurglings specifically, give me so much trouble when it comes to actually killing them. But, yeah, so I was also at Coastal Assault. Surprise, it's been quite a while since I've played, and I played the Gene Stealer cult. And I'm not sure if we talked about it, but yeah, Crucible. Dan and, Smith. All 3 of you went to Crucible, right?
Yep.
Now,
yeah, we were all there.
Well, I did buy my ticket, and I was planning to go, and then I pretty much noodled out at the last moment and blamed it on my paint jobs. But really, this transition from Imperial Knights to Gene Stealer Cult has been tough because, specifically, moving so many models and then not necessarily understanding what all of them do just yet made me feel like I was going to waste the other person's time, or not let somebody get to 6 turns and they're at a tournament trying to be competitive, and I pretty much just sawed off their knees. But that was my concern going in, and I would say that this event started in a wonderful way whenever my first round opponent was Eric Saggers. We talked a bit before the game. He was playing Marines, and he said it was his 3rd tournament ever. He's still not really used to his specific list and all that because he's fairly new to the game. So he kind of went through the spiel as well, where he's like, yeah, I kind of take a little while. And then I was like, I feel the same way. We should just treat this as a practice game. So, we started the game out just knowing we weren't going to finish it, but pretty much working each other through the stages of the army, and it was really neat. We ended up getting to the 3rd round, but, neither of us had any hard feelings about it. And I felt like that was a great way to start, because then I had a better grasp on how my deployment worked, the relics I was going to choose, a good reminder without feeling the pressure that I was expecting. And then 2nd round, I went against big ol' schmuck that I've never seen before. Surprised that he was allowed in. That was John Lennon. Round 2. That was exciting. Yeah, I don't know. Some dude. Singer or something. But so this is how it started. I am still packing up my models, and lunch is going, but I'm taking forever getting my stuff off the table. And then Lennon walks up next to me, and he's like, yeah, how'd that game go? And, I explained, got to 3 turns. I ended up winning 22-16, I think was the final score. And either way, Lennon comes up, and he's like, oh, yeah, well, I was like, I don't know, we might play or something. And then, I don't know. And then after that, you're like, yeah, we're definitely playing. Like, we're paired up for the next round. So I was not expecting that. Going to round 2, and this is the first game that John and I have ever played. And he played Genestealer Cult right before his current list, the Marines. So he knew more about both armies, way more than I did, which made an interesting dynamic.
I don't know if John knows what he's doing with Genestealer Cult, so
yeah.
he probably...
Don't want to listen to that advice. But.
Yeah. Well, the secret is that no one else knows what Genestealer Cult do, so I just kind of made up rules for a couple months, and honestly, no one ever asked me to open the book.
Yeah, well, that's good. So that was a really good game, and it really set me up for my following games, because as I was doing things, John knew from the very beginning where the entire game was headed, so I don't think he felt too much pressure to compete necessarily, so he was kind of showing me the ropes, like turn by turn. Pointed out some things that was like, well, if you moved here, it might optimize where your charges could be, and then you could use this stratagem that you've never heard of, and suddenly cool things happen. And that's pretty much how that game went. Well, how did you feel about that game from the other side of the table, John?
So I'll preface this by saying that my first round ended in a tie. And just due to the number of players, that kind of immediately meant that I wasn't going to win the tournament. And that's all right. I wasn't, going into this trying to be big dick energy, crushed everyone before me. But, getting that kind of pressure immediately out of the way where it's like, okay, I didn't have to take a tie, but I also now know that I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be winning. So I'm going to try to have some fun here. And I get to play, my man Jimmy, who I've never actually gotten to play before. So I was very excited. But really, I was just thinking all right, obviously, I know a lot about Genestealer Cult. I know how the turnings work. Jimmy was playing Alex McDougall's list from Attack X. So I know it's a solid list, but, I like to talk to Alex a lot. He's a good buddy of mine. So I understand how the list works, and I've played with all of the elements of it at some point or another. So I was pretty comfortable with the matchup. I knew that my army had the tools to deal with it, but I also knew that it could kind of be challenging. So more than anything, I wanted to walk Jimmy through it and show him how he could get the most out of his army. Because while Genestealer Cult can give anything a game, it is an entirely T3 5-up save army, and I have Hurricane Bolters on Centurions and just guns all over my army. So I didn't want it to end up in a situation where it's just blowing models off the table for no reason. I thought it'd be most fun if we, had a good tight game where I could kind of show Jimmy some of the, more precise technicalities of Genestealer Cult that maybe aren't as obvious, and then also kind of show him how my list was going to interact with it, and tell him before he did stuff, just that he could make the right decisions. And I thought it was a really fun game. I thought that I had the screening and the durability to kind of carry the game at the end of it, but I figured it'd be relatively close.
Yeah, and we ended up ending that game 32-26, I believe. And
that sounds familiar. It's definitely in that single-digit range.
Yeah, and I know. Hold on, I was going somewhere with that. So we got through all 6 turns. Yes. So I was actually winning on primaries until I think the 5th round, and it was like a very obvious slide. I ended up getting tabled in the 6th round, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but so like in the beginning, I felt like I had some control, and then as we move forward, John showed that was just a hallucination, and all of my things were slowly getting removed to the point where I didn't really have any presence anymore. But there was a really cool moment in the charge and fight phase of round 5 where
God.
I thought it was pretty great. So I had a Magus in the back corner of his deployment zone, had a magic box. So I deep strike in the Magus and deep strike in a unit of Brood Brothers to hold an objective right next to his deployment area. And basically each turn used that as a little area for things to drop in with the Magus. So another unit of Brood Brothers, my Acolytes, and he's just back there doing nothing but casting Might from Beyond, just trying to buff whoever might be in that little box with him. Well, turn 5, there's nobody left. Everybody who dropped by around him died, and he's just sitting in the box alone. So there is a Tech Marine and a Librarian that are standing right outside this little cathedral, standing on an objective. So I was like, there's not much left to be done. He's going to get charged and attacked in the next turn. So I charge him out against the Tech Marine, thinking he's just going to get, smacked in the face, but he's going to do it on his own terms. Well, he gets out there, and John surprises me as stat by stat. It's like, so how many attacks? I was like, yeah, 3 attacks, I think. And then, what's his strength? It's 5, I think? And then his weapon does D3 damage per hit. So he ended up killing that Tech Marine. Just one swing with his little staff. Knocked him right on the noggin.
2 wounds, I think I snake-eyed that shit.
Yeah.
And then you hit those damage rolls, and I just disappeared.
Yeah, it was, it wasn't consequential, but it was very exciting. And that Magus needs a paint job. But John did win the game. And there it was.
Yeah, there was that.
Yeah, and then round 3, just to breeze through here, we got Nick Saint Amour. Also has a radio show, podcast type thing. He was wearing a shirt that had the name of it, but I don't remember it at the moment. He was a very energetic opponent, and there was a bar at the hotel, and I think he bought me at least 3 beers. So that was a fun time. And then the next round, day 2, first opponent, Scott Combs, and the highlight of this match is his beautiful army. He has converted an Imperial army into Skaven-esque characters, including 2 Knight Valiants, and he has giant robotic rat heads and tails that were taken from some other model, and it was giant twisting tails and stuff. So it was really cool. Highlight of that game, I think, was my favorite of the weekend. My Primus takes out Gulliman in solo hand-to-hand combat, which is absolutely ridiculous.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, so, luck was on that Primus's side, but he also needs a paint job. Each of my little dudes had a heroic moment in almost all of my games, leading to the very last one against Michael Miller. I was playing against Chaos, and it was Big Monsters Chaos. So there was Magnus, 2 Tzeentch Demon Princes, Aramin on a disc, and a Knight. It was a Chaos Knight with 2 Avenger Gatling cannons. So I feel like I made some good plays in there. By the end of the game, I didn't feel like there was much more I could have done until I spoke to John and realized that I made some pretty big mistakes with just one model that probably would have swung the game by turn 3 if I would have played it correctly. And that specifically is my Sanctus, little Genestealer Cult Sniper. He wounds on, he has a 4 strength whenever he shoots. He hits on a 2 normally. So, and if he rolls a 6 on his to wound roll against a character who can use psychic powers, a psyker, then they automatically take 1 mortal wound and they Perils of the Warp right after, in addition to their normal damage taken. There's a relic that he can take that says that he has +2 to wound, which means he's wounding characters on 2s, and he is making psychers explode on 4s. And I didn't choose that relic, and that guy still killed 2 psychers, and then I didn't use a stratagem that would have let him shoot twice in the first phase. So I could have taken out his little bomb of sorcerers in the back, because he had 3 or 4 infantry spellcasters with a base 1,000 Suns smite bomb, and that's what ended up taking out the Aberrant in turn 3, the Aberrant unit, who just took out a Knight. So if that Sanctus would have been doing his work from the beginning with those bonuses, then I could have removed probably all 3 or 4 if I held them back in a little building, basically. So that's a little bit of rambling, but I felt like that was a big learning experience. The exciting part of that game was my Patriarch, my Warlord Patriarch. I had Headhunter, and I was pretty much done for at this point in the game. At the very end, I couldn't scrape up enough points, and there were not any more of my troops left on the battlefield, really. But my Patriarch runs out in the very end in like desperation because I'd never really gotten him into combat, and he is able to advance and charge. So he advances, charges at one of his 3 magic users that are left back there, one of the psychic dudes, just rips him apart. Guy is dead in close combat, and it's beautiful. And then I just consolidate toward the next one, and then I'm holding an objective at the same time. So next turn, the next closest psyker casts, I turn off the cast, and then he advances, but he rolls a 1, and then I advance past him, and then I do the 1-inch charge and kill that guy too. So basically the Patriarch is just running across the battlefield, killing all these characters and getting my last headhunters, and kill 1 per round. So he was just like dishing in the points at the very end, the last surge of adrenaline. But I did lose that game, as I believe I said before. If I were to play that game again, I do think I could win, or at least have a much better, closer chance. Just because of that stuff with the Sanctus. I feel like that was a big misplay. I just didn't know all that guy could do.
Yeah. And that's the tricky thing with Chaos in general, Jim, is they have a lot of tricks and layers, and Gene Stealer Cult have tricks and layers. So to have those 2 armies interact is just going to be a very busy game. So it really takes knowing both armies and what they want to do really well to come out ahead, because you do have a lot of little built-in answers, but it's little things that all add up throughout the game. And like you said, the Sanctus one was the biggest, but there's also other little decisions throughout the process that change if you have that, and then it starts to steamroll.
Yeah. And that specifically is something, as a newer player as well, I've always felt that I'm lacking knowledge. I need to get more practice games and stuff, but not everybody plays everything in your local area. Like, while you're practicing, probably be a tendency to play against 1 or 2 people because they're just the closest and most available. So you don't necessarily get an army range. I have recently, after this tournament actually, in an attempt to compete a little better, have decided to try to commit about an hour or 2 a day to reading through all of the codexes, like one at a time. So basically on my computer, pull up codex on one screen, pull up the FAQ on the other so I can reference what's current, and then just study every army. Even if I get a baseline knowledge of them, at least I won't be super confused when somebody puts down something that I barely play against or haven't played before.
Yeah, and that's kind of a big thing, actually. One of the armies I was concerned about for myself going in was Imperial Fists. I knew that they kill vehicles, but I didn't know a ton else, like how they got there. On the drive up, Lennon and I actually had a good discussion about Imperial Fists, and just that talk, I knew exactly what threats I needed to deal with if and when that matchup came up. So, yeah, and to kind of go back a little bit too, I am curious just your general feel from the weekend, getting those 5 games in. Like, it sounds like from the first game where it was basically a practice game, figuring it out, to getting to play Lennon all the way through the end. Like, what's your comfort level with the army now? Would you say, like, you're pretty confident, you like it, there's a lot of tricks? Obviously, you have an idea. When you started, you didn't even know what you didn't know, but now it sounds like you have a lot of ideas on how to progress and continue to improve with the army.
Yeah. I would say it definitely gave me a good starting point. I'm not at a point where I would feel like confident per se, but I could play a coherent game. I don't think that I would have a positive winning record in the next event even. But it's just the learning curve that I'm getting through. I definitely feel a lot closer, though, than when we started that one. I would at least feel confident enough to show up without feeling like I was going to be like wasting the other person's time. Like I was saying, my deployment and my movement got a lot of practice through those games.
Just to chime in real quick, I think that's huge, going home codexes. Unfortunately, I have to do mine a little bit different. I know you guys, mentioned earlier, over the weekend being pretty successful against the Space Marines. Same thing. I mean, I figured, all right, we're going to be seeing these all over the place. I better get familiar with them, and it's just, I just try and get as many games in it as I can against that specific faction or army or whatever, and try and figure out what your biggest threats are, what they do, so you kind of already know what to expect versus just going in blind. I mean, my first few games, I had a couple of games against New Space Marines, I had a couple of RTTs, and both times I was just kind of walking up to the table, no idea what was getting ready to happen. You kind of had heard a little bit, but I had never seen it in action. And I think knowing those rules, reading them like you're talking about, Jimmy, and then getting those games in against those specific armies that you're worried about, it gives you just, like, in my opinion, just visual, all right, this is what they're going to do. This is what I can expect. This is what I have to kill first. This is what I need to do to try and win that matchup. So I think that's a great idea.
Then for me, after that first round tie in my game against Jimmy, I did actually manage to finish out 4-0-1. So I was pretty pleased with that in the end. That actually ended up putting me at second place behind the winner of our top table game, whichever Daniel that just so happened to be. My round 3, I got to play against Chris, who is a very talented Dark Eldar player. Really, the Centurions carried the weight of that game. Really, it's just Centurions did magical things there. And then the next day, I had 2 pretty solid victories. I played against Reggie, our local Crucible TO and everyone's favorite gray-haired Miami native. And then I got to play against Cody, and Cody had a pretty interesting list. It was actually the old-style Salamander Selfless Sacrifice, which was amazing. But fortunately, I was able to get into melee very quickly, and that really, really ended that game almost immediately. So that was pretty fun. Definitely just carried through the weight on indirect fire character Dreadnoughts and Centurions. Pretty much the same style as before.
Yeah, and that's kind of that list. If it gets into your guts, you're done. You got bubble guts the rest of the time.
Oh, yeah.
So you gave Cody a little bit of the bubble guts.
Just a little bit.
All right, so I'll dive into my games because they were a ton of fun. I can't say enough about all of my opponents. My round 1 was against Matt. He had Pure Guard, beautifully painted army, Shadow Sword, 3 tank commanders. And I was worried. I was like, man, if I go second, he's going to just remove 3 of my assets, and then I'm going to be playing from behind. Fortunately, I went first. I removed the Shadow Sword, and then he did. I think he killed all 3 flyers. I mean, he had some serious return fire, but it got to the point where I had the character Dreadnought with 4 las cannons, and tank commanders don't have an invulnerable save. And with all my infiltrators, I was kind of able to just move up and take the board. So that one went my favor. But it was a fun game. Matt was a great opponent. And that took me into my round 2, which is against Michael Nick and his Chaos. And I primarily have played Chaos for most of 8th edition. And for some reason, I know why, I guess, but I was like super nervous about this game. Like on paper, it's one that I should have a good advantage at. I've got flyers. He has Lord Discordance. I have certain things he doesn't interact with very well. But I know Chaos can be super tricky and can just kind of win games you don't think they will. So like I was kind of nervous, and Michael Nick was just great about, like, basically he was like, "You're good, man. Like, don't worry about it. This will be a nice, easy game. No stress. Like we're both communicating well. We got the objectives on the table. We went through our intent with dice and our intent with measurements, and very much agreed to have a gentleman's game. And so I kind of like sat back, took a deep breath, and then proceeded to put literally my entire army into an Ahriman with a 4-up save. And it took, I want to say, 40 saving throws to kill Ahriman. And he had a 4-up invulnerable save. He literally made 34 out of 40 invulnerable saves.
What was it about Ahriman that you put that much into him? Was it like just the end of the game, or was he an important?
No, that's top of turn 1. The way he deployed, Ahriman was on a flank, and I was able to just get Ahriman to be the closest. And I was like, if he's going to give me Ahriman, I'm going to take it, because that gets rid of +1 to cast. That gets rid of his primary warp time, so he's going to have to spend a command point to familiar to warp time on a different character. It's Ahriman is one of the key pieces in Chaos. And he absolutely did put him out there as bait to protect some of his other stuff. But I decided to take the bait just knowing if I can drop Ahriman, I'm going to be in a good position. What I wasn't accounting for, again, was he made 34 freaking saves. It was honestly, it was hilarious. Like, and again, I have nothing but respect for Michael here. He couldn't believe it. Like, so the first time I did like 13, I think it was 13 or 14 wounds. He was like, man, I gotta like make all of these. And I was like, yeah, I think you do. He does. And we both just looked at the table and looked at each other, and we were just like, did that just happen? And so I was like, okay, I'll put my second Stormhawk into him. Kind of the same thing, like 12 more saves. He failed 1. And I was like, I know those are just like team dice, but like something seems kind of weird. He's like, I'll grab some other dice. And so I put some other stuff into him, and he's like still just tanking saves for days. And I finally got through and killed him. And then, so I'm just thinking like, okay, that was a fluky turn, whatever. His turn 1 and his return fire, the exact same thing happened. Like, he's nailing everything, and I'm just like, I have a 5-up save. I'm gonna make 6 out of 6. Like, okay, like so I think between both of our turn 1s, we killed Ahriman, and that was it. It was just the weirdest thing ever. And then the dice finally balanced out. The game finished up, and it went how we both kind of expected. But it was just the most bizarre turn 1 I have ever witnessed as far as dice variance. And that's kind of like what I have to say. Like, Michael Nick was a great opponent, a great guy, and I gladly play against him anytime. But that was just wild. Anyways, then I'll dive into game 3. It was against Jason. He's a member of Brohammer. He was playing Custodes for a while, moved to Imperial Fists, and he had like a threat overload Imperial Fists army that infiltrated, deep struck. I mean, everything in your face, turn 1, anti-vehicle, ignores cover. And this is kind of why I have the Repulsor in my list, because I have the -1 damage from the Ironstone, and it appears to be threat number 1. And so Jason put everything to kill the Repulsor, which he did, and then he did manage to also kill 2 of my flyers. But what that did, it meant I still had a flyer left, and all my other return fire. So I was able to basically remove all 5 threats that he put in front of me on my turn 1, and fly my plane into his backfield, so he had to deal with that, which was just enough to where I was able to turn the tide on the no line of sight battle. I took out eliminators, I took out some scouts, to where when he finally dealt with the flyer, all he had left were the Thunderfire cannons. And at that point, I was able to grab board control and let him just Thunderfire cannon me to death, because now I'm controlling the board. So I had to sit back and absorb everything and then push out really aggressively. And it worked out. But if we were to fight again and Jason knew that was my plan, I'm pretty sure that he would win the game. It was a very tight game, and he's a great opponent. I kind of set a trap for him, and it worked, and I don't know that it'll work again. So my game 4 was against Lee. He was playing Successor, White Scars, Iron Hands, very similar to Lennon's Crucible list, which I was actually super nervous about, but at the same time kind of excited, because I had seen it in action with Lennon, and knew because of that I kind of knew what it wanted to do. I know Lennon has a lot more tricks that I didn't see, but it gave me an idea of mitigate one Centurion threat, prepare for the other Centurion threat, don't give any slingshot units, kind of stay back, concede that I'm going to give up hold more early. And really what that came down to, because Lee had the lead for the first 3 turns, I started closing the gap turn 4, and I had set myself up for 1 or 2 plays, but Lee timed out right on turn 4 when he charged in with his Centurions and killed my Repulsor. So because of that, I once you time out, you can't really take any other actions. So I was able to take my turn 5 and turn 6 to kind of just clean up, make sure I scored more points than he would, stuff like that. So that one really did come down to the clock quite a bit. I had some ideas and was comfortable with the game. I didn't think I was going to get beat, but I knew it was going to be close. But we didn't have to find out because of the clock. So that was kind of that game. And then I heard that Dan had beat Mark Perry, and we were going to be seeing each other top table. And honestly, I was pretty happy about that because I love Dan, and whoever won, I was going to be excited. So, yeah, that was my thoughts. Let's hear yours, Dan. What were you thinking, having to come see me on top table?
Yeah, man. So I was definitely really excited. I know we talked about it earlier in the weekend about us, going top table, battle of the Dans. So that was definitely, I was excited about it, man, for sure.
Yeah, and what I found funny, and this was super relevant too, is we were outside hanging out. The weather was great. So we're hanging out talking, and I think we both kind of agreed, first turn's going to be really important. We have two high-powered armies. They can really prey on each other. And, we were basically, so turn 1's going to be really important. Hey, Dan, let's roll our ATC die just so, there's no question. Everything's fair. It's not, oh, your cheesy freaking pink dice that you have, or whatever it is.
The pink dice aren't cheesy, though.
They're cheesy. They're almost as bad as Will's red dice, man.
Oh, dude, Will's red dice are brutal, dude.
We agree to roll the neutral dice and everything, whatever. And of course, it ends up being mission 1 that we're playing. We both get to 15 drops, and I roll high, so I pick deployment. Dan gets to place the first unit, so he's going to have turn 1. And so we deployed back and forth and everything, getting ready to go. And of course, we roll off. Dan rolls the 6. I roll the 1. So Dan's going first.
Yeah, man. I saw I was going first, like you said about the trip. We kind of played a semi-game, different lists, but we knew how important that first turn was. So when I got that, you got to pick a deployment map, and then I got to deploy that first unit. I was definitely excited. I was like, all right, good. I got good odds of going first. And then when I rolled that 6, I was like, all right, man, I'm in it. I'm ready to go,
Yeah. So
little did I know.
When I saw you drop that 6, I was just like, man, it was a good run. I'm glad Dan's going to get this. But of course I had to be cocky, and I was like, all right, man, I'm a C's right.
You called it too, dude. I was like, oh, dude, you called it. You said, I'm going to roll the 6 right now.
Man, and that thing just it dropped. It didn't even bounce around or roll. It was just boom, there's the 6.
Boom, right in the middle of the table too, next to that big magic box in the middle. Just 6 right now. Oh my god, man. Here we go.
I couldn't believe that. And but man, even with that, what was crazy is I took out the Crimson Hunter and the Hemlock. And I still, I didn't do as much as I was expecting. You deployed great. You had that 5. And I felt like my turn 1, even though I took out 2 flyers, felt like a flop. And I was like, man, I know he's going to come after the repulsor now and probably drop 1 or 2 flyers. This ain't going to be good. And, I don't know. You kind of,
I definitely, I know when you went first, like you said, you killed the Crimson Hunter, you killed the Hemlock. I think that was the biggest thing. The Hemlock was actually, I think if you remember, the Hemlock was the last thing you killed that time. Because I don't think you were planning on going after the Hemlock initially. And I had that in the back of my mind. Because the Hemlock's really good for me in that matchup. The Hemlock by itself can almost take on one of those Inceptor flyers. And damn near kill it by himself. So I was like, okay, awesome. He's going to leave it alone. And then if I'm not mistaken, you used your character, Mortis Dreadnought, sitting in the back. I think that was the last thing you had to shoot, right?
It was either.
I think so, because I remember you rolled your damage, and your damage was I think it was right at 12 or something like that. And I was like, oh, good, I can get my feel no pains. Or was it the executioner? Might have been the executioner that killed it.
So I think what it was, because if you remember, I was just dropping spaghetti all over myself and kind of messed up my movement phase a little bit. And you were super cool about like, yeah, go ahead and fix it. Because what happened is I had the Mortis Dread was lined up to see a Crimson Hunter Exarch, and the executioner had accidentally moved in front of it, and so you let me move him back.
Oh, that's right.
So I shot the Crimson Hunter with the Mortis Dread, and then I put the Executioner Cannon into the Hemlock, and I believe I CP rerolled the last one to get 4 wounds on you, because I rolled like 3+ on 3 of them, and one of them was a 1 or a 2. And I wanted to get that 4th so I could get a minimum of 12 wounds. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, and you know, getting rid of that Hemlock, dude, I think was like, I think I told you after the game too. I think that was really big, because even with my return fire, because you essentially you took out almost two Crimson Hunters, because I think you left I had 2 of them still alive, and one of them was down to like 3 or 4 wounds or something.
Yeah, the one you lightning fast reflexed. I almost never finish the LFR flyers off. I just make you spend the command points and move on.
Right.
And yeah, he had 3 wounds left, because I couldn't chip him down with the other stuff. But yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, I didn't think I was going to be able to get that asset. And then I remembered that the Hemlock doesn't care about modifiers to hit, because it's got the Flamer. It's got, Jinx for the -1 saves.
Yep.
And because I don't have an invul on the repulsor, my whole thing is stacking my saves. So when I remembered that, I was like, I got to take that thing out, because it's got an answer for not just a Stormhawk, but it's also going to make my repulsor super easy to kill. And when that kind of clicked, I was like, well, what do I have left? My freaking Executioner. Like, that's it. And the math really wasn't in my favor, but I figured I'd take the risk and see if I could push through. And fortunately, I did.
Yeah, because I think you hit all 4, wounded all 4, I think, and then that minimum 3 damage on those Executioners is so money.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I think he rolled a 6, 4, and 2 once. So I was like, 12 damage. Also, I was like, I can probably save myself from this. And you reminded me, you're like, oh no, it's actually 16 damage or something like that, because they're each minimum 3 damage. And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yep. Yeah.
I was like, all right, so there goes the Hemlock.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Because I remember you got to make like saying that. That's literally what that Armin did to me. Like, I can't be doing that. But yeah, I think honestly, like, that was my favorite game of the weekend too, because like, it was so low stress. I started out just nervous and kind of hyped up, and you were super great about being chill in the movement phase. We were having fun, laughing. We were trying to troll Lennon and Cody next to us, because I believe that's when Lennon got in the guts. So
Lennon was in there, dude. He was in there. He was all up in there, dude. Yeah, because they were not paying attention to us.
Not at all. Man, that was like my favorite part of the whole. We're literally playing top table for the G, and we're both just sitting there just trolling, and just that was so cool. Like, that was great.
Yeah, dude. But yeah, that. Like you said, that was definitely one of my funnest games of the weekend. I mean, against Space Marines, I didn't really get too into it earlier, but against Space Marines, I've kind of started learning what my biggest targets are, what my biggest threats are to my planes and to my fire prisms and stuff. And in my earlier games, I was able to usually I can use my movement to kind of stay out of harm's way, kind of mitigate what I'm getting shot with. But again, you played it super well. You were able to put, you got bonus like the first 2 turns just because of all your execution eliminators and your scouts, getting on those 5 objectives right from the rip. So I was like, man, it was. I tried to hang in there. I think I still was able to do a lot of good damage, but unfortunately, it just wasn't enough.
Yeah, and that was kind of the the big thing for me was I deployed in bonus, and I was like, well, even if I go second, I got a decent chance. But if you remember, I think it was turn 5, we started calculating it out, and I think I had like a 7-point lead, and we realized you could score 11 points across the last 2 turns. Like if I didn't get rid of the autark and I think 1 or 2 other units, like you absolutely could have just jumped right in front and taken the game on the last 2 turns, even with everything going my way. And like when we were looking at it, and I realized how close the game still was, like that was like just cool. I don't know how else to explain it. Like everything, the whole momentum of the game, it was going in my favor. But when we sat back, I realized, like, if I wasn't careful, you're going to just take this thing right from me, and like the upset of the freaking century on it.
Yeah, no, and I think that's one of the strengths of that Eldar list. It's been common for a while now, and there's nothing super special about it. It's a bunch of flyers and some fire prisms, but I think one of the biggest strengths of that list is not only the speed, but just the number of assets on the table. We talked about it after the game, and I remember you saying, hey, there's 10, you have 10 assets, damn, 7 flyers and 3 fire prisms. So Eldar in general, Dark Eldar too, is, just spreading your threats amongst all your units versus having just a whole, all your damage coming out of 2 or 3 key pieces. And a lot of times I think that's a big part of Eldar's strength, is that they're able to really spread it out amongst the whole. So I don't know. Yeah. I think that helped me keep it close. So.
Yeah. And that was the thing, because I knew, like, going into it at the end of turn 1, whoever went first, I would likely only have 1 primary asset left, and then like the Thunderfires and the little stuff. So I had to limit the number of assets you had. And I think I was able to just stay ahead on that curve. But yeah, if you go first, I think that game is completely decided the other way.
Yeah, complete theory on my end. This is just assumptions. If I could go first, I think I can pretty reliably take out the Executioner. And if I can take out that and 2 flyers, I think that right there puts me in just a huge advantage for the rest of that matchup. You know what I mean? That's essentially what I was able to do when I played Rob. I was able to kill that Executioner, and I think I took out 2 flyers on my first turn, and that just put me in a really good position.
Yeah, and what that does to me too is then I would have to focus 1 flyer a turn, and I don't know if I can stay ahead doing that because of the fire prisms, because I have to just ignore them, and whatever damage they do, they do. And I'm pretty much relying on just getting out of line of sight in the magic boxes and hoping that's enough.
Yeah, that was another cool small thing I noticed about the prisms after last time we played, was that 2 shots they can put out at string 12, it's -5 AP. That's actually coming into play now. For most of 8th edition, I've just always believed that anything over like -2 or 3 AP is just kind of redundant. It doesn't do a whole lot for you, because usually those things that you're shooting at with those have invulnerable saves. But I think now in this current meta with Executioners with Iron Hands, if things don't have invulns, that -5 can really come into play, because Space Marines are able to stack those saves so much,
Yeah, that's a big thing for me too. Like, Imperial Guard, a lot of the, like, if you hadn't taken the 5-up invul on your flyers, they wouldn't have had any save at all. A lot of the Dreadnoughts we're seeing don't have invulnerables. So AP5 just gets through some things, and yeah, that's big, and you have a lot of it. So yeah,
I've solid 6 shots. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But so yeah, is there anything else, the tournament or the last round? I think I'm doing pretty good, and we're actually hitting the hour mark. That went pretty quick.
I think I'm good. John, did you have any other input?
Not on Coastal Assault. I really had a good time. Had great opponents in every single game, even round 2. No, it was a really good venue. Really impressed by the terrain. This was a first year event for Coastal Assault. So definitely getting to see, anytime you have a first time event, you're always a little nervous about how smoothly it will or won't run. But definitely really appreciated the terrain they had going on there. I thought it was a good event. I definitely would like to come back.
Yeah. So, 2 other things I did want to mention. One, Team Brohammer got a really cool shout out from the Battle Brothers. It was their 16th episode of their podcast. Go check it out. It's got Juice on there, Stephen Four,
John Naden, Austin Wingfield.
Yes, thank you. For some reason I was thinking Stephen Naden, and I was like, no, it's Stephen Four. Like, what's going on with my brain? Yeah. But yeah, so they've got really high energy. They got me they got me feeling good about Pro Tabletop, which unfortunately I can't go to, but I'm going to be excited to watch it and watch the stream and everything. And they did break a little bit of news on the podcast, so go check that out.
Absolutely, go give them a listen. I am going to be at Pro Tabletop, but they got me all excited for it again. And then they had a little conversation about kind of the team aspect for the ITC rankings, and sure enough, Brohammer is still sitting pretty number 1. Something that obviously is my priority for the season more than any Best in Faction award is that team award. But Battle Brothers are real close, and they've got a lot of hard-hitting guys on their squad. So definitely LVO is going to be really exciting, seeing how everyone does right at the end to see who can take on that title.
Yeah, and the one thing that kind of got to me the most that I really like is Juice was saying how LVO, we're going to see like Nick Nanavati and John Lennon playing at some point. Like that's probably going to happen. We're going to see Siegler going against some of the other big names. But what will really come into play is not 1 through 8. It's going to be 9 through 25. And I think it was Sean Naden who said like, it's where your bench comes into play. So I don't know if people here play fantasy football or if they're baseball fans. But the guys you're not normally thinking as your home run hitters, they're the ones who might just be clutch and might be the ones who push through and really seal the deal for the best team. And so that got me really excited because, I've now won my second GT and like I'm feeling good about myself, but I really haven't even been to a super major outside of the States or a major, or not even outside of the state singular. Like all my stuff has been in Florida. I've gone and played ATC at Tennessee and then been in a couple other GTs, but I haven't been in any majors or super majors out of Florida. So it got me really excited to go do my best. And, even if I don't top 8 and do all this stuff for myself, if I can get into the top 20 and get a contributing score to help push our team to the top, like that's my new goal. Like I don't care about anything else. If I can contribute and help this team to win, or definitely stay in the top 3, that's the minimum goal. But if I personally can help, like that's what's got me so excited is he did absolutely point that out and to totally just butcher it. Like he juiced us up for it. So I'm ready.
That was terrible.
I love it. That's been stuck in my head all day. I just wanted to say like
he juiced us
up, fam.
Maybe that could be their tagline. Really it's like get juiced.
I don't know. It was really good to listen to that episode. Juice was tossing us some love, but he's a good guy. Definitely really nice to hear that from him. Hear the kind words. So shout out to you, bro. Thanks for being kind to us.
Yep. You're now like my favorite people just for that.
Oh, yeah. It doesn't take much. Daniel has low standards.
I do.
All right. Anything else before we wrap up? Next episode, I'm sure we'll be talking about Tyranids because they're going to be in the next Psychic Awakening.
Oh, this isn't even ironic. Sure. We could actually talk about them.
For sure, we will be talking about Tyranids at some point soon because I'm going to deep dive that Psychic Awakening.
Deep dive it. Put it right down your throat.
Yeah. Daniel, you don't play Sisters. Both Daniels, where are you two headed in the future?
So I'm currently working on Salamanders. I think I'm going to give them I'm going to go ahead and jump into that Space Marine band little change of pace. You know, something that I wanted to bring up, thanks to a kind friend of mine, my buddy Dan here. Looks like I might probably have the opportunity to go to LVO this year, which is going to be awesome. And I just wanted to shout out Dan for that, man. You're awesome for doing that. So I appreciate it. And I too, I'm really pumped, and I'm pumped to hopefully also contribute to the team at LVO. So we'll see whether I make that happen with Salamanders or go ahead and just stick with the Eldar. I'm not sure yet, but we'll see what I do.
Yeah. I guess I'll go into that for a second. So first place for Coastal Assault was the High Roller package. And I had already purchased an LVO ticket. So Dan, when he texted his wife and said, this is top prize, she was like, hey, if you get it, like, go for it, take it on. And so, I was going to have an extra ticket if I won, and if not, then Dan was going to go with me. So before the game, I was like, hey, Dan, no matter what, you're going to LVO. How's that sound? So that's kind of what the whole team is about, is we take care of each other and we go have fun together. That's Warhammer is a social game. And if you can't be social and have fun with your friends, then it's not worth playing. So.
Yeah. Thank you, man. I just want to say thank you again. Really, really appreciate it, man. It's awesome.
That's what we do. I got you, bro. And then, so moving forward for the future, I am going to build Sisters of Battle. I have no idea if I'm going to actually play them or just keep riding with Iron Hands, because they've been good for me. But I did order a few Sisters of Battle starter sets, and we'll see where that goes.
I was actually thinking about ordering one.
Well, you're already too late.
Dang it. Why am I too late? I don't keep up with news.
They literally sold out in 5 minutes.
Okay.
They sold out pretty damn fast.
But you did manage to get 3?
Yeah, and I'll sell you one at triple the cost.
Oh,
Ooh,
yeah.
Boo.
I like that.
That's not what bros are about.
That sounds like a
Speaking of
great
being
deal.
I wouldn't do that. Shut up.
Too late. You can't take it back now, Dan. It's already sold.
Yeah. But I wanted all 3.
All right. Is there anything else we had going on, or are we about ready to close it out until next week?
I just want to give a shout out to my turkey Carnifex. So,
We expect to see progress pictures.
All right, I'll post them right here. If you're watching on YouTube, check out that screen and check out my beautiful Carnifex. I'm doing holiday Carnifexes. So I've done Halloween, and then now, of course, Thanksgiving.
Yeah. And maybe we can post them on the Facebook page as well.
Yeah.
And
I'll have to paint something just so that I have a hobby picture to contribute now.
Yeah. And I have an idea for a giveaway that we might do, so I'm going to tease that now and
Ooh.
go into that more next week.
Can I win?
No.
Oh.
It's actually because of you. You asked, we had talked about ordering something, and then you ordered it, and then I ordered it, so now we have extra.
Yes.
So might as well do a giveaway.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Should we say it? Are we allowed to say it? You sound like you're being suspicious.
I just like to tease. It's fun.
All right.
But it does have to do with some swag.
Some of that swag.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, maybe we'll tease that next week then.
Well, this was the tease. We'll spoil it next week.
Wait, okay.
And then.
All right.
And then we'll talk about Tyranids.
We're rambling, so I'm dipping out. But thank you for listening. Please check us out on YouTube, Podbean, iTunes, Facebook. There's probably more sites. Just Google us, FloridaMan40k. Drop us a like and ask any questions you have. We actually got a listener question, and we asking us about Tau, and tune in next week because we completely forgot to prepare for that. So next week we are going to wrap up our episode with Tau. This episode ran a little bit long because we had guests on and we weren't planning on Daniel winning the event, but here we are. So we will get to that question next week, but ask any questions you have and we would love to talk about it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for listening and have a great week.
Yeah, and thanks again.
And thank you to Daniel Monsalve.
Yeah, thanks
Man,
for
I was-
having me, guys. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely, bro.
Good night.
See ya.
Bye.
See you guys.